Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to support the discussions that we are having on this very important legislative proposal. And I want to, first of all, congratulate Honorable Mule and Honorable Githinji, because this is the closest we have come to actually addressing the issues that we have had with CDF, that we have had with GAF. Instead of complaining out there, Madam Speaker, instead of paying a lot of fees to lawyers to go to court, I think we are now using this floor appropriately, that we deal with this matter once and for all, that we entrench it in the law, we put it in the Constitution, so that this debate of whoever is sitting on the chair of either the legislation, of either the executive, or even the judiciary does not have the power to actually take it away from the people. And Madam Speaker, I think, as my colleagues have said, if you go around the country, in many places, especially the rural constituencies, Madam Speaker, you will realize the only visible fund that can be seen on the ground is actually CDF, that we have enough things that we can stand up and say. Madam Speaker, it is the third generation of county governments, and you cannot compare the work that CDF has done in the last few years, Madam Speaker, with what and the billions that have gone to the county governments, Madam Speaker. So I want to support this idea, and I also want to laud this House, because under the standing orders this time, Standing Order 114, we now have a window to actually ventilate. And this is also a form of public participation, Madam Speaker, that when you have a legislative proposal, you can bring it to the floor. The Speaker allows that we comment on it, because the nature and the law that governs the issue of constitutional bills means that you cannot amend even a comma or a full stop, Madam Speaker, when it comes to the floor. What that does, Madam Speaker, is that we will talk to it, and at the end of the day, it passes the way it is, or you lose it altogether. So this window, Madam Speaker, not only gives the issues to the public, it also serves as public participation, but more importantly, it helps to actually enrich the law. And the drafters, I'm sure they are taking their notes, Madam Speaker, that even after this session of this debate, we'll be able to get a full printout of this ventilation by members, so that as you craft that law, they come up with the best that it can get, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is through CDF that secondary schools that we have built, like the 35 that are in my constituency, Madam Speaker, have administration blocks, have laboratories, can compete even with Sarehe, can compete with other areas, Madam Speaker, schools that never thought in their lifetime they could even have such infrastructure, Madam Speaker. Primary schools that have been neglected for a long time, Madam Speaker. Today, if you go to a school called Kapkures in my constituency, Madam Speaker, that had a mud-walled administration block. If you go to schools that had mud classrooms, like Meli Primary School, Madam Speaker, these schools now have gotten a facelift and have gotten dignity courtesy of CDF. Madam Speaker, teachers have had terrible working conditions, Madam Speaker, from toilets, from classrooms, from offices, Madam Speaker. We have had classrooms sharing two classes, Madam Speaker. You find one class is facing one side and the other one, grade 2, is facing the other side, and it is actually a chaotic scene, Madam Speaker. But through CDF, we have been able to ensure that we have put these standards to be akin to even academies and private schools, Madam Speaker. That meaning that we have been able to equalize every child, regardless of whether you're going to a public school, regardless of whether you're going to an academy, Madam Speaker, you are able to get the same standards and almost similar infrastructure, Madam Speaker, courtesy of CDF. Madam Speaker, courtesy of CDF, we have so many people who have been actually direct beneficiaries, from employees, from the committees that are constituted in the constituencies, Madam Speaker, from the people who work in the constituency CDF offices, Madam Speaker. All these people are dependent on this CDF, Madam Speaker. And what this CDF has done, Madam Speaker, is actually set the pace of how other funds should be administrated. What do I mean by that, Madam Speaker? CDF has set the threshold of how much money should go to bursaries, what percentage should go to construction, what percentage should go to sports, what percentage should go to environment. Madam Speaker, the law is actually very clear on how that is done. I don't think there is any other law, Madam Speaker, that has such clear guidelines on how administration of the fund should be done, Madam Speaker. And this is actually what the county government should borrow and import, Madam Speaker, so that you don't end up spending 80% to pay workers, some of whom have actually been shown by audit to be ghost workers and spend a very small percentage to development, Madam Speaker. But the push and shove with CDF, Madam Speaker, has had many enemies, right from people who feel like the CDF fund has made them look bad because they're not delivering, and that way we have had very many sponsored cases back and forth from the judiciary, and we have had a long time and a long battle with that, Madam Speaker. So this law will actually put that to rest and will be able now to deal with issues as they come. Madam Speaker, the issue of the National Government Affirmative Fund, Madam Speaker. I know from the 11th Parliament where I sat, the 12th Parliament where I sat, this fund was actually a fight between members representing single-member constituencies, as it felt like it's a competition. But, Madam Speaker, what the affirmative seats have done, including the women rep position and the nominated position, is incubate leaders that today we can have the governor of Meru, who was a women rep, being a woman, that today I stand here having benefited from a nomination, Madam Speaker, that today we have the governor of Homa Bay, who was once a women rep, Madam Speaker, that today we have the Honorable Mishimboko, who was once a women rep, we have the Honorable Rueda from Lamu, who was a women rep. Madam Speaker, it has become a fertile incubation grounds to get members to run for other seats and to be able to compete outside there, Madam Speaker. But they have had a challenge, because when you're talking 100 million for CDF, you're talking 7 million for a constituency, Madam Speaker, and you're talking billions from the county government, and these women have had a hard time to actually keep up and be able to deliver in their mandate. So putting this in law, Madam Speaker, then, it will be able to give more women the power and be able to run and give them the mandate and give them the power and the push they need to be able to run. And Madam Speaker, what that would mean is that more and more people and more women will be going to be governors from women rep position, will be going to be single member constituencies from women rep position, will be going to be senators, will be going to be deputy governors from the women rep position, Madam Speaker. And what I have learned, Madam Speaker, over the time, the last 3 parliaments, is that we have gone a full cycle, Madam Speaker. We have had people here who sat in 11th Parliament. When I sat in the Senate, they sat in the National Assembly and they bashed the Senate. But in the 12th Assembly, Madam Speaker, they ended up being senators, and others who are senators like ourselves, Honorable Elachi, Honorable Ngera, we ended up in this house in the National Assembly. So what I hope is that we can look at this legislation for posterity, that it is not a personal issue, Madam Speaker. Today, even the Speaker of the National Assembly was a senator. I mean, we have governors who are senators. We have senators now who are governors. We have people who have served in the executive. We have people who have served in the judiciary like yourself and are now in this house, Madam Speaker. So I hope that we can look at it from that posterity, that we are not making the law for ourselves, but for years to come, Madam Speaker. That said, I hope that we can look at the constitutional issues, that these issues do not hamper the implementation of this law, Madam Speaker. We hope that we get the drafters of this law getting to pick the issues. I personally like the idea that we should also look at the idea of separating the funds, Madam Speaker, because one may have an issue with one and go to court and get it to be shot down as an unconstitutional and also affect the other. So I hope that the legal and our legal teams will be able to look at the best way to actually get these houses to work together. And I hope that we can also learn from experience, and that we are having the 3rd generation county governments, Madam Speaker, that we have gone all around it, that will be able to ensure that all of us, the Senate, the National Assembly, are at the same table and are doing this to be able to achieve the same goal. Madam Speaker, that said, I hope that we can be able to fast track this legislation, that we get it to the Senate and the Senate also passes it, Madam Speaker, so that the issues we are grappling with right now, I mean, if a girl does not do her KCSE right now or her KCPE, Madam Speaker, because they have been sponsored by CDF, within a year, that girl is a parent, whether a baby or not. So, Madam Speaker, I hope that this law can be fast-tracked so that we get to the end of it. With that, I support.
Thank you, Member for Gilgil. I now call upon Member for Kipkelion East. Okay. I now call upon Member for Kangema.
Madam Speaker,
You're there.
I had actually participated in this. I'm waiting for the next.
Okay, then you can. All right, kindly, honorable members, if you have spoken, if you could kindly remove your cards so that others can have an opportunity. Kindly remove your cards. I can see member for Chesume had spoken and his name is, he's got his card there, so if we can remove our cards. Okay, I'll now go to member for Kibwezi West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You can go next.
Join the rest of our colleagues in supporting the amendment by the Honorable Mole and the Honorable Gishimo to entrench the CDF, to also entrench the GAF, and to also create the Senate Oversight Fund through a constitutional amendment. Mr. Speaker, I think there is no gainsaying as to the work that CDF has done in this country.